Welcome back to Talk of the Town on WHTC, Holland's Cool FM, on WHTC.com, and on the WHTC app for your smartphone. Once again, here's your host, Gary Stevens.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Tuesday, July 28th. It is the fourth Tuesday of the month, which means at this time we catch up with things going on with the Allegan County Community Foundation. Its Director of Strategic Initiatives, Chris Kleinyan's on the other side of our table this morning. Chris, good morning. Welcome back, sir.
Good morning, Gary. Happy to be here.
And if you have a question for Chris Kleinyan, 616-395-1450. And before we talk about some of the things going on with the Allegan County Community Foundation, sort of a little bit of a primer. First of all, the foundation itself, it's been around for 60-some years and has helped nonprofits by putting funds directed towards some of the initiatives that these nonprofits do have.
Absolutely. Yeah, we exist to help all residents of the county, and our primary mechanism of doing that is through the nonprofit community, which works with populations that need assistance or need reinforcement or just general admin. Now,
this might be something more for Stephanie and the leadership there, but I'll pose it to you as well. What criteria does the foundation have for determining which nonprofits will be helped by which grants?
So that's a really interesting question, because I do think that sometimes people wonder how funds get distributed. So we do have a grant cycle. When we put out a call for interested parties to apply for grant money, that goes to a group of people that is distilled from the community. So the idea is that we make decisions internally. We guide the process internally. However, it is community members who look through the applications received, discuss them, and then based on merit, based on a variety of issues, determine who those awards will go to and the amount of the award.
So the majority of the nonprofits that are in Allegan County pretty much familiar to the foundation. There might be a new one every once in a while, but for the most part, if a nonprofit is petitioning a grant, you pretty much have a good track record of how that nonprofit is.
One would think, but the nonprofit, again, having worked in this field for over 2 decades, there are some, I want to say, like Wild West elements to it, because, a nonprofit, its origin is usually, some friends sitting around a table going, this is an issue we should do something about. And so they begin organization in like an informal manner. And to be fair, if you are going to pursue a 501c3 status, which is your nonprofit designation, that is a process. But there are nonprofits that are in the process of doing that have not done that are really just standing themselves up, finding the audience, finding their capacity. So nonprofits pop up and nonprofits dissolve. So it is a very fluid environment. So we are we are regularly informed of and discover new nonprofits that we weren't aware were operating in certain areas of the county. And at that point, we reach out to them and try and bring them into engaging with what their mission is and how we can possibly help.
Along those lines, then, Chris Kleinyan's, does the foundation work as sort of like an incubator for new nonprofits to help them navigate some of the turbulent waters that usually happen in the beginning months of the nonprofit's organization?
So it is a tumultuous thing starting up a nonprofit, and we do utilize our position as being really a trusted convener by all members, by all people in the county. So the nonprofit community generally trusts us. The county administration does, elected officials, because again, that we occupy this very neutral space between all three of those audiences. So yes, when nonprofits reach out, we can typically put them in touch with people that can assist, people that they're going to want to liaison with, because Allegan County is, it's not much larger than any average Michigan county, but it does seem very spread out once you get into it, and communication from one end of it to the other can be somewhat difficult because there's just so much space between, and so we find nonprofits in one area that are doing work similar to another one. We try and put them together so that they can collaborate and possibly strengthen each other's operations.
For those who may not be totally aware, the physical size of Allegan County, a little bit deceptive, to say the least. It's bigger than what people might think. It
is, and it's a rural county, and that's a beautiful thing. But along with the rural county comes a road network that is, maybe not as built out as Ottawa County is, and so getting from point A to point B typically takes a little bit longer. And when you're trying to, deliver service to a community, that is something that you always have to take into account.
If you have a question for Chris Kleinens, he is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Allegan County Community Foundation. He'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450. We talked a little bit about what exactly the Allegan County Community Foundation is. What about your particular title, your expertise that you bring to the table as a member of the foundation?
So I bring a mixed bag of things to the foundation. Initially, my initial position was community impact officer, and under that purview was trying to focus the county's efforts as a whole among all parties on getting more new housing stock developed, and that was directly came out of the housing study that the foundation paid for and commissioned from Bowen National that showed that, unlike every other county in the state, county in the country for that matter, we have a housing shortage. And so the idea was how to sort of create a catalyst and, again, convene interested people throughout the Midwest, really, because housing is a regional piece, in the pursuit of getting more housing for Allegan County residents, because that was a definite need. And along that effort came our movement into impact investing, which is where we are allowed to take 5% of our total corpus, which is the total holdings that we have as far as assets, and typically we grant money, and that's in the nonprofit world we call that free money, because we just give it to you and just really would hope that you do good work with it. Impact investing, on the other hand, is a loan. So it's a relatively new thing that community foundations have moved into in the last decade, last 15 years perhaps. And what that loan is, it's well below prime. So prime is, hovering 5.6%, 6%, depending on what day of the week it is right now. We typically would look at not going any lower than 3%, but 3 is still half. So what an impact investment allows a developer to do is bring a project to market cheaper, which reduces the sale price, which makes that house, condo, duplex, whatever, more affordable for the residents. And we typically see that as what we call gap funding. Gap funding is that last little bit to make the project affordable for the average family, the average worker in the county. And so that became part of my purview as well. And now I have invested in a couple of special projects as well. So as we see more needs and I have capacity, other pieces keep falling into my bag.
Now, you talk about the investing aspect instead of just the grants. Does that help also in making these projects accountable to the foundation? In other words, you're putting money into a good situation and not just throwing money into the wind.
Oh, absolutely. And, we don't, we're investigating 2 projects right now and that we're considering making investment in. And the process we go through is no different than a bank. We are a trusted holder of funds for residents of the county and organizations. So we don't take that responsibility lightly. So the things, we go through the same procedure that any other financial institution would go through, and that does, I feel it does bring a little bit of something to the project to have our involvement, because again, if we feel it's worth taking the risk, which is essentially community risk, on this project, it has merit.
Now, clarify for me, and I'll probably say this sort of in a general way, and you can probably amplify and magnify this. The foundation has had, I believe, 2 housing summits where you've discussed addressing more, and I say you being the foundation, addressing more housing options, more opportunities for housing. How have those summits, for lack of a better term, been, and how much progress have you seen since these summits began in terms of addressing the need for more housing in Allegan County?
So that's a really good question, and housing is like a slow rolling metric to sort of track. And I'm coming up on the end of my second year at the foundation, and the biggest piece that we've seen is our ability to convene has really been helpful, both inside the county to bring interested parties together in the greater West Michigan area, because, again, development is a regional piece. Developers are not, we don't have a large developer core in Allegan County, so we rely on developers coming in from outside, small developers and large, and getting them into the table. What we've seen from the housing summits is it increases the conversations and the familiarity. Part of what we initially discovered was that Allegan was just far enough away from Grand Rapids and just far enough away from Kalamazoo that it occupied this very unknown zone for a lot of developers that do capacity projects. So bringing them in and kind of introducing them to the people that do the work in the county has been really helpful. Our first housing summit, we drew, I think, about 35 attendees. This one that we had a couple of months ago, we drew almost 100. So, and all of the subject matter is derived from what I hear in my conversations with regional developers, local electeds, local officials about what they need to know to make this project move forward.
Follow me on this, Chris Kleinians. When will these summits, if you can project, turn from awareness of the problem to solutions for the problem?
So fair. Solutions are typically derived out of those discussions, and so a lot of times, and because it is such a long track. We're tracking right now about 15 potential projects. Some have broken ground. Some are in the discussion. Is this a feasible idea? Is this possible? Does the zoning work? And so there's a number of pieces. There's a number of projects that are at different points along the trail. And my job is to really kind of help those get to wherever they're going to get. At the same time, I say that there's 15 in the chute. I've discussed probably another dozen that seemed really good and for one reason or another did not come to any kind of fruition past planning. But you want to make sure that every one of them gets the effort behind it that we can possibly channel, so that each one has as much of a likelihood of success as another.
Locations, obviously, that's an old real estate line. Important things: location, location, location. Are you seeing initiatives throughout the county, or are you seeing maybe initiatives focused on the southeast corner, which is Otsego, Plainwell, or maybe the northwest corner, which is around here in Holland, or maybe down the South Haven or Wayland areas? Where are you seeing most of the interest right now for these projects?
So a lot of the interest for more dense opportunities to build housing is coming out of the cities, the municipalities that have sort of retuned their zoning. So you're absolutely right. Plainwell, Otsego, City of Allegan, Fenville, And Holland, because Holland takes a big scoop into Allegan County, and Holland has been very generous, we'll call it, with extending their infrastructure wherever, when it's feasible. And that's another huge piece, is that, wherever we can try and find a way on margins to extend infrastructure, that helps these projects maintain affordability, because it is roughly $36,000 a linear foot to run water and sewer, and to run it for any distance becomes a very prohibitive cost. Now, Saugatuck Charter Township has also done some really good work on their zoning as well to create energy around the idea, and so they're getting a lot of interest as well. It's really, there's some areas that are leaning into it, and some areas that are trying to balance their agriculture and their sort of the culture of that area with the need for more housing. We typically tell people, that the people that generally want to live in your community are your community members. It's your kids, it's your grandkids, it's the people that you know that are just having trouble finding housing.
It's interesting you bring that particular point up. As a former Ottawa County Commissioner, they're meeting tonight to set aside about 700 acres as part of the agricultural retention efforts. The farms are the TAPAS fundraiser with that, and that's being done in Ottawa County, trying to make sure that not all of the farmland gets developed or taken by some other means as well. I would assume, even though you're not a member of the Allegan County Board, that's being also done in Allegan County, or at least they're thinking about it.
So, talking to the commissioners in Allegan County, ag is, and the preservation of ag space is very important to the county commissioners, the township trustees. It's a vital economic engine as well as part of the culture of the county. And we are very adamant at the foundation that we aren't trying to tell anybody what they should do. We just want to help communities envision what they'd like to see. And I've attended, there's 33 independent local units of government in the county, and I've attended the meetings of, I think it was 27 at last count. And every one that I've been to, no one has said we need no housing whatsoever. Everyone agrees that we could all, whether they could use a few or whether they could use a bunch. And what we really try and do at the foundation is take that piece and channel the discussion into, okay, how can we help you achieve the community you envision and still preserve the pieces that make it your community? And we are not about coming in and sort of, you want to do this and you want to do that, because that's not how I would prefer to operate at any given time. And it doesn't really get good results. So, but as municipalities and townships see the need, we want to be there and available with the resources that can help them get connected up quick.
Chris, let's stay on housing for one more topic. Efforts are being made on the state level with legislation to open up more housing opportunities. Helpful or hurtful?
So it's helpful. There are a lot of very strongly felt opinions on the legislation that's on the floor of the House right now. And there are a number of bills, and not all of them are going to get through. But the ones that have gotten through thus far, the elimination of second stair requirement and the tax credit package, those are going to be very helpful going forward. As with anything, it's going to take a little while to get into the ecosystem, but fundamentally, that second stair requirement is going to create more capacity for housing in a multifamily development, because the space that second staircase was taken can now be turned into livable space, which ideally reduces the rent or the cost of that unit, which again is all about taking these little slices off to get it down to an affordability level to where the average resident isn't paying more than 30% of their monthly incomes exclusively towards their housing. The tax piece that will take a little bit too, as developers figure out how to work that, and the homeowners and builders figure out how to work that piece. But anything moving forward is great. The national bill was equally good. But talking to people now, it's we need housing now, and the trouble. And legislation is great, change is great. It creates better conversation, it creates a better environment, but it's a slow roller. So it's hard to be patient when you want your child to move out of your basement.
I equate it to, we got to do something to save our phony baloney jobs, gentlemen. The line from Blazing Saddles on that.
I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
But anyway, how much, and maybe I'm playing this up a little too much, Chris, but I see one of the factors in terms of dealing with housing stock and why we are, maybe having some issues is we're seeing, I wouldn't say more and more, but the arrival of short-term rentals. To me, as a layman, I think it affects housing stock, especially for those who might be purchasing property just for short-term rental use, not for housing use. I can understand the mom and pop wanting to rent out their cottage to get some extra revenue, but I'm seeing others buying property, flipping it over and making it an Airbnb or a VRBO, and there's housing stock going away.
That's a really good point, and that's a really nuanced conversation that we engage in with some of the more coastal communities. And a friend just sent me a report from I think it was the Michigan Association of Realtors that does show that the economic impact of those short-term rentals is pretty significant to an area's overall economic income. So that part is something to be considered. I do think that that is something that each municipality really needs to kind of look at on their own merits. And there are some, not necessarily, I can think of one community in particular that it isn't in Allegan County, but it's remote, it's relatively close, where the short-term rental piece has really locked up a lot of the available land and created a significant issue for getting anything done. And those types of things, and I mean, obviously you and I are both aware of how Park Township is trying to handle their thing. And I think that, it is, it's really hard because, again, housing also brings a lot of emotion to the surface very quick. Again, because when you think about housing, it is one of those Maslow's things. I mean, it is, if you do not have access to safe, secure housing that you feel you can afford, you are in a vulnerable position. So it gets very emotional very quick. So they're tough conversations, and I don't think that we created, when we did the Zoning and Enabling Act, that was even considered to be a thing that could happen. But here we are. But I agree that it's a spicy topic, but one that we can't shy away from discussing.
If you'd like more information about the Allegan County Community Foundation, what it does, how you can help with your legacy giving or other giving efforts, go to AlleganFoundation.org. That is AlleganFoundation.org. Or you can call the Allegan County Community Foundation at 269-673-8344. 269-673-8344. Chris Kleinians, as always, thank you very much for your time. Wish you well. And we look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Chris Kleinians of the Allegan County Community Foundation. NBC News with Michael Kastner straight ahead, followed by WHTC News. Second hour of WHTC's Talk of the Town will include Brian Spencer's What's New Around Holland, and we'll have a conversation with a couple of people from the Hope Network. It's Chief Advancement Officer Jamie Counterman and the Executive Director of Hope's Centers for Autism, Maggie Moore. You're listening to Talk of the Town on WHTC, Holland's Cool FM.